Hello, and welcome to Old Scary World. Today, we'll be looking at San Francisco again, as I've been in kind of a San Francisco kind of mood, growing up in the area and all. So, it's always been one of my favorite cities to cover as far as Old World and Tartaria history. And this video, to be honest, isn't so much about necessarily Tartaria or even the Old World, but just the history of San Francisco in itself is rather interesting, and I happened to come across some photos I'd never seen before, as I try not to be too repetitive, and in fact I don't believe I've ever repeated a photo unless it was to illustrate context or to prove a point. And so this photo here, just kind of jump into things, I found particularly interesting because it's from 1895, so before the earthquake. And usually when you see these kinds of buildings, you see them in kind of a rundown state. But this one almost looks pristine, but I'm not sure if it still exists or not, at least not in this current state here. And some smoke billowing out here. And we have a couple gentlemen standing here, and you can kind of see they're releveling the ground here, digging something out maybe, who knows. But nonetheless, I found it very interesting. It's obviously a damaged negative here. This is all kind of adds to the effect though, if you ask me. Shows its age. And then here we have some ruins from Golden Gate Park after the earthquake, supposedly. Not sure if this was ever rebuilt, but you can kind of zoom in here and see how thick the walls were. And this is all pre-1906 construction. Obviously, this is probably, official story was probably that this was constructed in the late 1800s or so, but you see this kind of, Greek, Romanesque kind of construction. And they'll chalk that up to a revitalism, in that style and all that kind of stuff, but other people have other theories about that. And here we have another picture from Golden Gate Park. Here it's these columns here. It just seems so out of place, almost like a portal, just all on its own. No statues, no nothing. Almost like something left over. But the reflection here is nice. And not really much you can say about this. It's very minimal, it's very stark, but very powerful at the same time, especially with the reflection. And these photos, that I found, not necessarily for their quote-unquote evidence of anything, but just to take them in, just to spark the imagination. Here we have another photo from Golden Gate Park. This structure here. Large group of people. Looks like there's some type of musical performance here. The guys in the hats, all that. Some people call them inheritors. Some people call them worse things than that. I don't think that when I say inheritor, just to clear things up, I don't necessarily mean bad. It's just more that most of these people weren't born in California. Most of these people came from the East Coast or the old countries. Eastern Europe, Western Europe. All these people were from Russia, supposedly, and they just kind of came into this thing. A lot of this stuff was built out, dug up, and rediscovered before they even got here. But they were sent to places like San Francisco and Chicago and New York and Los Angeles, and they were just kind of told, hey, get with the program. It's the American dream. It's the American experiment. So just have a ball. And that's the thing that people don't understand, especially with California, is that it was a magical time. There was not a lot of responsibilities, and it was almost like everybody was just on vacation. I mean, people worked and stuff, but it was a different world. I'll just say that. That's undeniable. And worlds change, things change, resets happen. So here we have picture from 1906, people looking at the fires, supposedly as a subsequent result of the earthquakes. And we see this kind of thing happening all the time, even to this day. The current situation in Ohio with the chemical spill, and we see billowing smoke. This is different, obviously, but it's the same. It's people are removed and told everything's okay, and they have to go back and rebuild and try to get on with their lives. But maybe that's a whole other video there too. But nonetheless, you see some of the construction that was never rebuilt, some of the buildings that have never been accounted for, and then within 14 years it was built up twice as big, supposedly. There's another picture of the ruins. You just see everything cooked out. You just see everything absolutely blasted. This is all brick, concrete, cement construction, and it's just absolutely brittle. Just completely decimated by the heat, supposedly. You see these people wandering through here. And say what you will about what caused it, and why it happened, and what really happened, and who really built these buildings, and who really rebuilt them, and all that kind of stuff. It's still interesting nonetheless, very haunting too. There's a certain quality of these old photographs that lends to the effect. You see, just in theories and speculation aside, you just have to wonder what it was like back then. There must have been a different feeling in the air. And here we have an old world ship. It's from supposedly the early 1900s in the San Francisco Bay. And you see something like this and you just wonder what it would have been like to sail across the oceans in something like this. Nowadays it's a novelty, but supposedly at that time this was state of the art. You just see how complex it was. All the rigging, these masts, all these sails. Each sail has a different function to go in a different direction or a different speed. Just bobbing around here in the ocean. Say what you will, like I said, but it must have been a magical time. Now, I apologize for the resolution here, but the reason I include this was because I hear a lot, I do these videos and I hear a lot about the African American or the black representation, and here you go. People say there wasn't any black people, there wasn't any melanated people back then. It's simply not true. And you can see by the way that they're dressed that they're on par with other people. Here he's got a hat, she's got a hat, he's got a hat, she's got a nice dress, gown. So I'll try to find more. Maybe I can do a whole episode about that, but for now this is all I got here. And this was 1906. This was during the earthquake. So there you go. For anybody that doubted the population at the time, there's at least a fraction of it. And here we have Sutro Heights here in 1886 with the lions and this whole thing going on. Now, for those who grew up in the Bay Area, specifically the peninsula area south of San Francisco, these things are scattered all over the Bay Area. There's a few of them in various cities, the lions. And the lions, there's identical ones of these in a neighborhood that I'm quite familiar with on the peninsula. And then I found out later in life, coincidentally, that these were designed by the Bohemian Club. Now, if you know about the Bohemian Club, then you know about Bohemian Grove, Mark Twain, other people like that, supposedly. Artist colony up in the Russian River in the Guerneville area, Rio Linda. But yes, these lions, it's interesting because to me it's like, it reminds me of my childhood, to be honest. And there's a whole story with those. But yeah, and then we have another image with the gate shut, and then it creates this kind of circular effect here. It's pretty nice. And then you have some statues up here and all this kind of stuff. Just some of that old world charm. So I wanted to include that there and give you that little backstory about the Bohemian Club. And you can look into that. They designed neighborhoods all over the San Francisco Bay Area in the late 1800s. Okay, so here we have 1886 ships entering the Golden Gate. And you see how kind of wild it was. You got these ships coming out here, little statues and things. It almost looks like a garden of some sort. This is overlooking. This is before the Golden Gate Bridge was supposedly constructed. And then we have the cliff house in the background. We have this guy looking out here, Sutro Cliffs. And there's see it right here, but this little structure here. And then there's caves. There's a few little caves around here I've been in. Haven't been in them in over a decade, but around the bluffs here, there's little caves and things. But I always like this building a lot. It's very, very mysterious, very impressive. And then here's a shot before the earthquake in downtown San Francisco. I think this was like 1901. Between 1901 and 1905, if I remember correctly. So there's that. And then you can see some of that old world brick here, old stone. A lot of people. And that's the other thing, sometimes people say, oh, there's no people in the pictures, the city was dead. No. There's plenty of people doing stuff, meandering about. This fountain is still here. I've been around this fountain a few times on New Year's Eves. This is a popular spot during New Year's Eve here. This fountain supposedly was one of the only working fountains after the earthquake. A lot of the fire hydrants and water fountains supposedly were damaged during the earthquake, and this one was one of the ones that was still working, supposedly. So it's still there on Market Street. But you see some of these old buildings. These were never rebuilt. And you see some of these Antiquitech kind of things coming out here. Energy transference. But yeah, a lot of these buildings were never rebuilt. They were destroyed and never been. There's the turnaround for the trolley cars. And then yeah, Laurel Hill Cemetery. And they have this obelisk. And those who know about the history with the obelisk going back to ancient Egypt and even further back to Samaria, ancient Babylonia. So there's that whole thing that they put these obelisks with a little mini kind of star fort pattern here. Those who know about the star forts. On ley lines, focus energy in specific geographical locations. So this is a pretty nice picture here. Thought I'd include that. And then here we have a picture from the World's Fair, from the Panama Exposition, all lit up. This is when electricity was supposedly like a new thing, so the amount of energy it took to power this thing here. And you can see how far away they are. You can see from the vantage point here, you can see some windows here for scale. But yeah, it's probably going to be a shorter video. I just want to do something just because these pictures are pretty good. Let me know in the comments what you think, if I should do more videos like this where I just kind of show off some of the beauty of the old cities. Not just San Francisco, I can do other ones, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. I haven't even done a video on Los Angeles yet. Maybe that's due. So yeah, I'm just going to keep it kind of short and sweet, but thanks for watching. And as always, goodbye.